You're sitting alone on a quiet evening. Your phone rests on the desk. Silent. No missed calls, no unread messages. You glance at it, then look away toward the window where rain traces slow lines down the glass. And somewhere in that stillness, a familiar ache rises. Not because you want to be surrounded by people, but because you wonder if something is wrong with you for not wanting that at all. This is the psychology of people who have few or no friends. And if that phrase stirred something in you just now, a mix of recognition and quiet grief, then stay. Because there is nothing broken about you. Your solitude is not a symptom, it's a design. And by the end of this, you'll understand the architecture of that design, the wounds that shaped it, and how to open a door without tearing down the walls. Let's begin with a truth that most people never tell you. Not everyone experiences social connection the same way. For some, friendships feel easy. A quick exchange of energy, a casual bond, a network that grows without much thought. But for others, every interaction carries weight. Every person who gets close is quietly measured, and the idea of just making friends feels like being asked to hand over something sacred to someone who might not even notice they're holding it. Psychology calls this a high trust threshold. It means the bar someone must clear before you feel safe with them isn't low, it isn't average, it's high. Not because you're arrogant, but because your nervous system learned, perhaps very early, that careless people cause real damage. And this connects to something deeper, social reward sensitivity. Here's what this means in plain terms. When we interact with others, our brain releases dopamine, a signal that says, this feels good, do it again. But not everyone's brain responds the same way. For some people, small talk and surface level connection don't produce much reward. The energy cost is high, but the emotional return is low. It's not that you don't want connection, it's that shallow connection doesn't feel like connection at all. It feels like noise. And then there's what therapists sometimes describe as cognitive complexity, a need for depth, for meaning, for conversations that go beneath the surface. You don't just want to know someone, you want to understand them, and you want to be understood in return. This is where the metaphor lives. Imagine your inner world as a garden, lush, quiet, full of rare and delicate things you've grown over years of solitude. And around that garden is a gate, a high gate, not to keep people out, but because the flowers inside are too fragile to be trampled by those who don't know how to walk gently. This is your inner sanctuary, and everything you do, every social choice you make, is designed, consciously or not, to protect it. The question is, how did the gate get so high? Let's walk through the journey, not as a list of flaws, but as a map of how your psychology evolved. Pattern 1. Detecting the mask. You're in a conversation. The other person is smiling, saying all the right things. But something feels off. You can't name it, but you sense it. A flicker behind the eyes, a tone that doesn't match the words, an energy that feels performed. This is hyper-intuition. You learn to read people, not because you wanted to, but because at some point you had to. Maybe someone close to you was unpredictable. Maybe warmth came with conditions. So your brain became a scanner, constantly checking, is this person safe? Is this real? And now, years later, you still scan. You detect the mask before it even slips. And when you do, you step back, quietly, without drama. Because your garden has been damaged before by people who smiled while they stepped on the roots. Pattern 2. The allergic reaction to social noise. You're invited somewhere, a gathering, a group chat, a place full of small talk and surface-level banter. And instead of excitement, you feel something closer to dread. Not because you hate people, but because your system treats shallow interaction like static, like trying to hear a melody in a room full of radio noise. This is your social sensitivity in action. Where others feel energized by crowds, you feel drained. Where others collect acquaintances, you find yourself asking, but what's the point if I won't remember their name in a year? You're not antisocial, you're selectively social. And that selectiveness is not coldness, it's a form of self-preservation. Pattern 3. Finding safety in your own mind. You spend a lot of time alone, not because you have to, but because you want to. In solitude, you don't have to translate yourself. You don't have to perform. You can think, feel, create, rest, without anyone misunderstanding you. This is the sanctuary at work. Your inner world became so rich, so detailed, that it started to feel more real than the outer one. And that's not escapism, that's adaptation. Somewhere along the way, your mind became the one place that didn't ask you to shrink. But here's the tension no one talks about. Even the most peaceful garden can feel lonely at night. And that brings us to the next truth. Pattern 4. The evolution of the trust threshold. If you're still watching, this one might be the hardest to sit with. Your trust threshold didn't appear from nowhere. It evolved. Maybe someone you opened up to used your words against you. Maybe you gave loyalty and received silence. Maybe you were always the one who cared more, reached out more, and eventually learned that pulling back hurt less than being the only one trying. So the gate rose, not overnight, but slowly, stone by stone, until letting someone in became something you had to consciously decide, not something that just happened. And now, you carry two things at once: the strength of your solitude and the quiet grief of the connections that never worked out. Both are real, and both deserve to be named. If any of this is stirring something in you, pause for a moment. Breathe. You don't have to respond, but you might ask yourself, when did my gate first start to rise? So what now? If your garden is protected but empty, if your solitude is peaceful but sometimes aches, what's the next step? Here's the truth. You don't need to tear down the gate. You just need to install a door. Step 1. Name the grief without rushing past it. There is a quiet grief in being someone who needs depth in a world that often offers only surface. And that grief doesn't make you weak. It makes you honest. Before you try to fix your social life, let yourself feel what's already there. The friendships that faded. The people who didn't see you. The loneliness that sometimes visits even when you chose the solitude. Name it. Let it breathe. You can't build something new on top of something you've never acknowledged. Step 2. Test for depth before you open the gate. Here's a small practical tool, something you can actually try. Before you invest emotionally in someone new, offer them one honest thing, not a trauma dump, not your deepest secret. Just one real thought, one genuine feeling, one small piece of truth. Then wait, watch how they respond. Do they meet it with curiosity or discomfort? Do they offer something real in return? Or do they change the subject? This is your filter. This is how you test whether someone deserves a seat in your sanctuary. You don't have to let everyone in, but you also don't have to stay locked inside alone. Step 3. Let the gate open slowly, and only as far as it needs to. The door you install doesn't have to swing wide. It can open just a crack, just enough for one person, just enough for one honest conversation. And if that goes well, maybe it opens a little more. Healing doesn't mean becoming someone who collects dozens of friends. It means becoming someone who can let in the few who actually see you without losing yourself in the process. So here's what I want you to carry with you. You are not broken because your circle is small. You are not flawed because your trust is hard to earn. You are not failing at friendship. You are protecting something that most people never even learn to build. A rich, quiet, inner world that only the right people get to witness. Your high gate is not a wall of fear, it's a filter of wisdom. And the fact that you're still here, still hoping for depth, still aching for connection that means something, is proof that the garden inside you is still growing. If this reached you today, you might leave a word in the comments, not for me, but for yourself. A word that describes what your sanctuary feels like, or what you wish someone had told you years ago about your solitude. And if you want more of these quiet conversations, I'll be here. You were never meant to be like everyone else. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly why the right people will one day find their way through your gate.